Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading Hagar's Daughter by Pauline Hopkins. We're finishing up chapter 34 today, and we're going to read chapter 35 because chapter 35 is a page and a half. So finishing 34, reading 35. I'm going to back up a little bit from where we were since we finished mid-chapter, and I'll get to reading. And Jewel? She too felt that straining of her heart's cords as she waited in her private sitting room for her lover husband. She was alone. Ellis Ensign was with her stepmother. After Mrs. Bowen returned to consciousness, Jewel had stolen away unnoticed by the strangely reunited pair, leaving them in sacred seclusion. She held the evening paper in her hand. It contained a column headed "Sensational Ending of the Famous Bradford Tragedy." After detailing the day's events, the editor gave the story of the white slave Hagar, Mrs. Bowen, and her extraordinary recognition of her former husband and master in the person of Chief Henson of the Secret Service Division. The editor went on to say, no trace of woman or child was found after her leap over the bridge into the river. She was supposed to have been drowned. The woman, however, was picked up by a Negro oyster digger and concealed in his hut for days. At the breaking out of the war, she drifted to California and in a few years married the wealthy miner Zenas Bowen. This story, showing, as it does, the ease with which beautiful half-breeds may enter into our society without detection, is a source of anxiety to the white citizens of our country. Okay, hang on. At the breaking out of the war, she drifted to California. I mean, how does one drift to California? That had to be an arduous by itself. And in a few years, so she kept herself afloat for a few years, and in a few years married the wealthy miner Zenas Bowen. Okay, that's fantastic. No mention of her daughter, but I suppose we'll get to that. This story showing, as it does, the ease with which beautiful half-breeds the alignment between beauty and mixed race is astounding to me in these novels. The phrase half-breed, I don't love, but whatever. The ease with which beautiful half-breeds may enter our best society without detection. Our best society? Is Zenas Bowen really our best society? Everybody doesn't love Zenas Bowen. I mean, I guess you don't have to be well loved to be best society, but did they not just mean white society? But anyway, may enter our best society without detection is a source of anxiety to the white citizens of our country. I mean, and what about Zenas Bowen? It makes it sound like he was duped. My guess is he loved her and he married her. Now, I don't know what happened in their courtship. Maybe we'll find out. But come on now. At this rate, the effects of slavery can never be eradicated, and our most distinguished families are not immune from contact with this mongrel race. Okay, so at this rate, the effects of slavery can never be eradicated. So they think intermarriage will not eradicate the effects of slavery. I would say that might eradicate the effects of slavery. I mean, I don't think anything's going to eradicate the effects of slavery, but if everybody becomes just this kind of mellow brown, oh, I cannot wait until George Schuyler's Black No More is no longer under copyright protection and we can read it. I am looking forward to that day. It was published in like 1930 or something, so we have still a little bit to go. But anyway, and then this mongrel race. So now, not just black race, but this mongrel race, this race of half-breeds who are undetectable from white people. Maybe they're just white people at this point. I mean, I don't know. That's why I enjoy this literature, because I don't know. I don't know where we draw lines. I don't know if we should draw lines. I know different people draw lines in different places. I know people personally who self-identify as Black, and I'm happy about that. I'm not mad at that or anything. But like, if you were to look at them, you wouldn't guess that they were Black. You may not guess they're white. Some of them you would totally guess they were white. But like, people identify however they identify. And it's not that I'm neutral on this. I think I have some feelings about it, but like, I've got questions. I've got questions. All right, Mrs. Bowen has our sympathy, but we cannot, even for such a leader as she has been, unlock the gates of caste and bid her enter. Oh my gosh, she has been a member of your society for however long, and you even called her a leader, but now you can't unlock the gates of caste and bid her enter? Posterity forbids it. We wait the action of Mr. Ellis Ensign, Chief Hinson, with impatience, praying that sentiment may not overcome the dictates of duty. He was more or less married to her before. Granted, he didn't free her and he was her owner, and I was hot about that earlier in the book. But like, he loved, maybe he didn't love her. If you really loved her, would you have kept her a slave? Like, I've got questions, but we're going to go with the premise that he loved her. And so why would anybody think that now, after revealing himself, which he did not need to do, and after reuniting with his former wife, former slave, he would cast her aside? No, he didn't need to reveal who he was. If that was his plan, he wouldn't have. All right, let's keep reading, because we won't even have time for the short chapter 35 if I keep going through all this. And I'm getting a little sidetracked, not just by the reading, but because I got a mug warmer that I'm using with a candle, and I put a candle on it, and it's over here, and it smells really nice. I'm wafting. You remember in chemistry class you have to waft? I'm wafting the smell over. All right. Jules' tender heart was full of pity and love for her stepmother. Now she knew for the first time whence came the fountain of love so freely lavished upon her by this heartbroken mother. Okay, so I'm going to try to reserve my questions, but we still don't know who Jules' mom is. Do we know it's not her actual mom? Like, we don't know that, but maybe she lavished love on you because she was your actual mom. And maybe Zenith Bowen and what's her name, the mom, knew, like, maybe Zenith knew that she was an escaped slave, and they conspired together to say that this daughter was white so she would have better opportunity in life. Like, I don't know what happened. We're going to read, we're going to keep finding out. How she must have suffered, murmured the girl to herself. Then, as she mentally counted up the years that had passed since the events chronicled by the paper, she said aloud in some surprise, "Why, I must be the age of the poor baby girl." How wonderful. She was glad to be alone after all these weeks of tempest, and today's climax with its reaction. Mingled with her own joy at Cuthbert's release was a silent, wordless awe of Chief Hinson's declaration in the courtroom and her stepmother's avowal. But, strange to say, the girl felt none of the repugnance that the announcement of Mrs. Bowen's origin had brought to Sumner. Her own happiness was so great that all worldly selfishness was swept away. Hush! She suddenly rose from the couch where she was sitting with wide eyes and quivering form, hearing the soft musical voice outside, so yearned for all these dreadful weeks, now fast disappearing like a horrible nightmare before the rosy glow of hope's enchanting rays. She saw the door open and shut, saw Cuthbert's tall form enter. She sank upon the couch, putting out her hands to him in a trustful, childlike way. Without a word, he flung himself beside her and folded her in his arms with a passion and strength that were resistless. Mine at last, my darling, my one love, my wife. For a second there was a blank. Life itself seemed to stand still, and time and space were obliterated. "Husband," she said at length with smothered passion. He stopped and kissed her in a strange, odd way, silently, solemnly, as a man might who had been so near the grave, heart to heart, soul to soul, conscious only in that supreme moment paradise was touched. So, for some minutes they sat in soul communion. Sumner broke the silence after a time. "Heaven only can reward Chief Hinson and Venus Johnson for their rescue of you, my treasure. May heaven forget me if I ever forget their devotion to my dear wife. I tell you, Jewel, I was maddened when the news was brought to me of your abduction. I would have been a murderer in truth could I have been free for one moment to meet Benson." The wife's lips touched his softly, lovingly, true woman to the core, as a ministering angel. But, dearest, God protected me. There was another eloquent pause. Then Sumner said abruptly, "Tomorrow our marriage must be properly advertised. It is Thursday now. On Monday you must come with me to my father. After you have seen him, you shall plan our future." After you have seen him, you shall plan our future. We're not going to plan our future together. And it's laying it on pretty thick about true woman to the core and ministering angel. How might that get flipped? Jewel laid her head against him. "Your wishes are mine, Cuthbert." It's still funny to me his name is Cuthbert. And my name's Rashonda. I got no room to talk about anybody's name. Then they talked a while of the strange revelations made at the trial, of the discovery of Negro blood in Aurelia Madison and Mrs. Bowen. With the knowledge that we now possess of her origin, we can no longer wonder at her wicked duplicity, said Sumner. Let's back that up. Aurelia had wicked duplicity because that was who Aurelia was. Has Mrs. Bowen ever shown any wicked duplicity? That is true in her case, replied Jewel, but a truer, sweeter, more perfect woman than Mama does not live on the earth. How do you account for it? Depend upon it, those characteristics are but an accident of environment, not the true nature of her parent stock. An accident of environment. So somebody who was born into slavery, was held a slave, pseudo married somebody, was going to be sold into further slavery, jumped off a bridge, got her way to California on her own, lived on her own, and has managed to become a good person in life. All of those are an accident of environment? Good night. I have all depend upon it, those characteristics are but an accident of environment, not the true nature of her parent stock. I have always heard that the Negro race excelled in low cunning. True, repeated Jewel dreamily, but then there are Venus and Aunt Henny. Yeah, there are Venus and Aunt Henny. Goddess on the mountain top, burning like a silver flame, the summit of beauty and love. Venus was her name. All right. Yes, and my faithful John. I suppose these exceptions prove the rule. Or maybe there are more than just exceptions. Still, I am thankful that Mrs. Bowen is only your stepmother. Because if she were your real mama, deuces. Then they drifted back into their lovers' talk once more. Look through mine eyes with thine, true wife. Round my true heart thine arms entwine. My other dearer life than life, look through my very soul with thine. It was midnight when the wedded lovers separated. In the hall they met. I guess everybody doesn't know they're married. Did they need to separate though? I read a whole romance novel that the two people were married and nobody knew they were married, and they would meet up and then go their separate. I was like, this is bananas. Just be married. I don't understand. It was midnight when the wedded lovers separated. In the hall they met Ellis Ensign, as we shall hereafter call him. The man's face wore a look of solemn joy. He shook Jewel's hand silently. He urged Sumner to go to his room with him and spend the night, for he had much to say to him in regard to the late trial. Sumner felt obliged to accept the invitation, and the two men went away together. The early morning hours found them still talking over the trial, but their greatest interest was the story of the elder man, the strange trials in two lives. How do you intend to fix it? Questioned Sumner. Of course, Mrs. Bowen is very much shaken, but we shall be quietly remarried on Sunday, and then I shall take my wife away. Is she not currently married? Did Zenas Bowen die? I took a whole year-long break from the book. I don't remember, but does she not currently have a husband? Was he sick? Did he die? I truly don't remember. I'm gonna assume he's dead and that she is not married because have y'all read the Outlander books? This reminded me, I love them. I love the Outlander book. Anyway, how do you intend to fix it? Questioned Sumner. Of course, Mrs. Bowen is very much shaken, but we shall be quietly remarried on Sunday, and then I shall take my wife away. Remarried? Were you ever actually married in the first place? When we return, I hope to have possession of Ensign Hall, where we shall take up our permanent abode. Does she really want to go back there? I hand in my resignation today to take immediate effect. I honor you for your resolution, Ensign, but indeed I have not your strength of character. I can never solve the social problem in that high-handed manner. Have you no fear of public opinion? My dear boy, I know just where you are. I went all through the old arguments from your point of view 20 years ago. I wavered and wavered, but nature was stronger than prejudice. I have suffered the torments of hell since I lost my wife and child. He rose from his seat and strode once down the room, then back again, pausing before the young man. Sumner, he said with impressive solemnity, we've been using the word solemn a lot. Race prejudice is all right in theory, but when a man tries to practice it against the laws which govern human life and action, there's a weary journey ahead of him, and he's not got to die to realize the tortures of the damned. This idea of race separation is carried to an extreme point and will, in time, kill itself. Amalgamation has taken place. It will continue, and no finite power can stop it. Okay, so I hear Hopkins proselytizing a little bit here, and I'm not mad at her. Race prejudice is all right in theory. I mean, it's not all right in theory, but But when a man tries to practice it against the laws which govern human life and action, there's a weary journey ahead of him. Yes, we're all people. That's who we are. People first. And that's really that. But my dear Ensign, you do not countenance such a terrible action as a wholesale union between whites and blacks. Think of it, my dear man. Think of our refinement and intelligence linked to such black bestiality as we find in the slums of this or any other great city where Negroes predominate. I mean, I think I need a moment. So, up until the trial, he thought of Mrs. Bowen, he being Sumner, thought of Mrs. Bowen with fondness, had nothing ill to say of her. Nothing, not a word ill to say of Mrs. Bowen. Finding out that she has one drop of black blood in her has now made him say that, think of our white people refinement and intelligence linked to such black bestiality. Really? Now he did, say that we find in the slums where Negroes predominate, which I guess maybe he's giving Mrs. Bowen a pass because she didn't predominate in slums. But do Negroes predominate in slums? Oh my gosh, Cuthbert Sumner, you need to bring it all the way down. Whew. Ensign smiled at the other's vehemence. Certainly not, Sumner. But on the other hand, take the case of Aurelia Madison, whom you dated. Let's not pretend like that didn't happen. Certainly not, Sumner. But on the other hand, take the case of Aurelia Madison. Did you ever behold a more gorgeously beautiful woman or one more fastidiously refined? Had her moral development been equal to her other attainments and you had loved her, how could you endure to have a narrow, beastly prejudice alone separate you from the woman predestined for your life companion? It is in such cases that the law of caste is most cruel in its results. I think that the knowledge of her origin would kill all desire in me. Says a man who's not been in love. Knowledge of origin doesn't kill a whole lot that's going on. I think that the knowledge of her origin would kill all desire in me, replied Sumner. The mere thought of the grinning, toothless black hag that was her foreparent would forever rise between us. Well, every black person does not have a grinning, toothless black hag as a foreparent. Let's start there. But even if we all did, You are not, you marry into a family. I am never going to say that families don't matter in marriage. They matter a huge, enormous, great deal. But you can marry into a family that has a grinning, toothless white hag in it, or a grinning, toothless, whatever race hag in it, and there's not a thing you can do about that. The mere thought of the grinning, toothless black hag that was her foreparent would forever rise between us. I am willing to allow the Negro's education. You are willing to allow the Negro's education? You personally have the power to keep me or from getting an education, but you are willing to allow me? Cuthbert Sumner. I am willing to allow the Negro's education, to see them acquire business money and social status within a certain environment. Social status within a certain environment. You can come up, but you can't have the full come up. Oh, I am not averse even to their attaining political power. Farther than this, I am not prepared to go. And this is the sum total of what Puritan New England philanthropy will allow. Every privilege but the vital one of deciding a question of the commonest personal liberty, which is the fundamental principle of the Holy Family tie. When one considers the ignorance, poverty, and recent degradation of this people, I feel that my position is well taken, persisted Sumner. Ought we not, as Anglo-Saxons, keep the fountainhead of our racial stream as unpolluted as possible? Please. Ensign smiled sadly. A holy light for one instant illumined the scarred face of the veteran. A boy's will is the wind's will. That's funny. A boy's will is the wind's will. The wind will go wherever it wants, and apparently so will a boy, leaving devastation perhaps in its wake. And the thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts, he quoted softly. You will learn one day that there is a higher law than that enacted by the earthly tribunal, and I believe that you will then find your nature nobler than you know. I hope so. You make me feel uncanny, Ensign, with your visionary ideas. Thank God I have my wife. There I am safely anchored. Amen, supplemented Ensign softly as they clasped hands in a warm good night. And now, Chapter 35. On Friday, the courtroom was again crowded to the doors by the spectators eager to view the closing scenes in the celebrated case. I don't know how to say this word. It appears to be French. It's SOI-DISANT. I'm going to do my best. If you know what it means, please type it in the comments. The soi-disant General Benson was arraigned on a charge of willfully murdering Elise Bradford and was committed for trial in October. Major Madison, or Walker, the ex-slave driver, and his daughter Aurelia were also in court. Madison for forgery in connection with Senator Bowen's will. Oh yeah, okay, so he did die. He had a whole will. Yeah, and they were trying to get the money. Yeah. Okay, it's coming back. So Mrs. Bowen is not currently married. All right, I think I'm on it. Nothing criminal was charged against Aurelia. In fact, no one desired to inflict more punishment on the unfortunate woman, and when she left the courtroom that day, she vanished forever from public view, and I guarantee you she went to go live somewhere as a white woman. Deadly pale but proudly self-possessed, Ellis Ensign gave his testimony at the hearing, fixing a steadfast, unflinching gaze on the livid, haggard face that glared back with sullen hate and fear in every line. So, for a moment of dead silence, of untold pain to one, those two men, sons of one father, but with a bridgeless gulf between them, stood face to face after many years. The story had to be told again, however deeply it racked one's soul to be forced to give deadly testimony against the murderer who, outcast by his own evil deeds, was still his father's son. The ghastly facts stood out too clearly for hesitation, and St. Clair Ensign, alias General Charles Benson, was remanded for trial. Owing to the unsavory character of the prisoner, extra precautions were taken by the warden to prevent a rescue or an escape. At 1 o'clock Saturday morning, the guard upon the outer wall that surrounded the jail saw a shadow that seemed to move. At first he thought it a stray cat or dog. Then as he watched, he saw that it stole along the wall suspiciously. Obedient to orders, he fired. The shadow fell to the earth. The men who came running at the sound of shots bore the wounded man back into the jail, where they found that their burden was the body of St. Clair Ensign, and that he was dead. The guard's bullet had taken a fatal effect. In the prisoner's bed crouched Isaac Johnson in a vain endeavor to cover up his former owner's flight. A gaping hole at one side of the cell told where an entrance had been effected. How Isaac had managed to cut his way through the solid masonry always remained a mystery to the authorities. Thus ended St. Clair Ensign's career of vice and crime. Walker, alias Major Madison, died in the state prison. And that is the end of chapter 35 in Hagar's Daughter by Pauline Hopkins. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda.